This spring was a critical turning point in my life, in a lot of ways. This is a story of desperation and survival, about testing your values and morals under extreme pressure that raises questions of, under pressure, what's right and wrong? What's right and wrong? The road remains, but the traveler doesn't. I'm different, and I burned the way back. And this is a story about why that matters. It's a story about all of us. So find yourself between the lines. I'm Addison. I'm the founder, creator, designer, producer, all of it for Sunrise Culture, the entire ecosystem across all the platforms. And this is a story of why I disappeared for almost 5 months, complete disappearance. And for those that are just joining the Sunrise Culture, even if this is your very first video, which is an interesting one to start with, welcome. This is one of the largest and most fundamental shifts in my philosophy and identity and how I understand the world that I've ever had. And this is how I took a journey from thinking I was completely ignoring and shattering all my values, the values that I've spoken for so strongly and advocated for so strongly with all this content, to understanding that I was actually making a fundamentally difficult choice that men have to make. Discovering in that place of crisis something I never would have seen coming. And now when I look back on everything, I wouldn't do life any differently than I am right now. So this is about how I burned the way back. So the first 2/3 of this annual cycle that we kind of go through from, typically like July 1st, August 1st, and till about, the beginning of summer, things were going incredible. I was working on my second year of a new position that had taken on some more responsibilities and had been applying nearly 10 years of work, expertise, and learning and networking and mentoring and philosophy and knowledge and strategies. So what I was doing, and things were going extremely well. We were performing above average and really seeing some good things year over year on the data, and things were going well. And then they were going well until they weren't going well. And things went from extremely good or high level good to terrible, tragic, even overnight. And so there had been some gaps in my content for just different life reasons, like being sick, holidays, all sorts of different things. Just kind of, it is. I work an 8 to 5 breadwinning salaried job and Sunrise Culture is something I do as a passion on the side, I guess you could say a ministry on the side. It's something I do that doesn't pay the bills, right? And whether it does ever or doesn't matter. If it ever gets 0 views, 0 engagement, I ask myself, would I still, if it didn't perform at all, be satisfied with the content I produce and the things I talk about and the philosophies I interact with and share? And the answer is always yes. I never hit the publish button on anything, Substack, Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, wherever, that doesn't satisfy me and make me proud and feel like I've done something worthwhile. So there's occasional gaps in the 2.5 years of making content, but starting in March of this year, 2026, for whenever you're watching, what went from a bit of a delay ended up being complete radio silence, just ghosting everything, just complete disappearance. And I didn't see it coming. Didn't obviously intend for it to happen, especially because of all the values that I've championed over the 2.5 years of producing content, and even way before then, just as a functioning, philosophical, critically thinking human. I started noticing that I things went from so good to so bad professionally, where I was genuinely, along with a lot of other people, fearful that my job was on the line. And then that means my ability to provide shelter and sustenance and clothing and all the things that I have to provide as a primary breadwinner for two people. That rely on me completely. They're helpless without me. Two little boys, my sons, and my wife at home, who works extremely hard, does more than she should, and that I really want her to, from a standpoint of I want to be able to provide enough where she doesn't have to work as hard and has the freedom to experience life the way she wants to experience it, because I'm the one taking care of things. And so I was in fear of my ability to be able to do that. So throughout this crisis, I gave up everything just to survive. Things got so bad, my only concern was getting from one end of the business day to the other emotionally and physically healthy. Just surviving mentally, and finding every last minute I could of every work day while I was on the clock to meet the demands of what was happening. And it was so bad, and there were so many things going on. Not really the space to kind of go into details with that, but there was such an existential dread. Every minute, my lunch breaks even came down to me just walking as quickly as possible to get food, getting up, walking out, and walking straight back to my office. I mean, it was a matter of a few minutes turnaround. It was just wolf down food just to survive physically and then get right back to the office and get to work. And I was being texted and messaged and emailed like after hours and on weekends, and did you do this? Did you do that? Why hasn't this been done yet? And having to constantly defend myself. So that's why when I say I gave up everything, it's not just a cool creator melodramatic thing to like hook an audience. Outside of going to work, from work, picking my sons up from school, preschool, daycare, and going home and being fully engaged as a father and as a husband, as just dad, and then sleeping if I could, that's all my days consisted of for 4 straight months. I gave up. I haven't been to the gym in 4 months, 5 months. Completely no reading. Didn't read ever. No writing. Barely scrolled social media, barely. I gave up all of it for a couple different things, a couple different reasons. Number one, I gave up all of that because I was in full-on fight or flight survival mode. I didn't have the emotional or mental space or thought capacity, mental energy, couldn't do any of that. So if I'm not doing that, I'm not writing. I'm not in a mental space where I can produce valuable content. I wanted to, and my principles beforehand seem to have dictated that I should have been able to. When I got home from work and was basically in a fight for emotional and physical job survival every single minute of every work day, when I get home, and this is the blessing and curse of good fathers. When I get home, there's 2 little humans standing, squealing, laughing, giggling at the door, bouncing in anticipation, whatever. They don't care what dad's going through. They're just excited. They don't care how much money dad makes. or what he did through his day, all they care about is one simple thing. Dad's home. That's it. Dad's home. So it was my responsibility to do just that. Be home. And so anything like this, even things I very deeply believe in, you put those things on the shelf. Because in a crisis like that, you really find out what really matters. Not from what really matters from a content perspective, or the things you can put in a cool video or essay or article of what really matters, and the things you can think about philosophically that aren't tested by real fire. You really find out what matters. Dad's home. And speaking of home, this is it. Welcome home. This is my home studio, Sunrise Culture Studios. This is my sanctuary. This is where I begin and end. You know, when I walk through that door and my life partner, my wife, is there to greet me, you know, there's a difference between what she cares about and what matters to her, specifically this. Yeah, she cares if things are tough at work. She cares if things are stressful or if I don't enjoy, right? She cares about that. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, good, bad, in between, whatever, what really matters to her is that I have walked back through that door and that I've still got a ring on my finger and I still care and I still show up. I'm through the door. This whole journey this spring about, you know, changing and coming under pressure and the difficulties of everything that I've had to challenge and do. You know, this about the traveler on the path changing. It reminds me of a story, a quote from a movie that I watched as a kid dozens of times, and it's a cool line, one line of dialogue that just like, I don't know, crashed into my head. It was a movie called The Patriot from like the early 2000s. And Mel Gibson plays a character called Benjamin Martin. He's a war hero. People know he's a war hero. They value his opinion, his expertise. He's a contributor. He's a leader. And he says he won't vote to go to war, and because he has to stay and protect his family. And he knows the damage that a war is going to do to the American population, and his family will be in danger. And at the same time, he's not also, because he won't fight, he's not going to cast a vote to make someone else go fight for him. And so one of his good friends, one of his fellow soldiers that had fought and bled with him in previous conflicts, challenges him, rightly, as good friends should do. And he says, what about your principles? And Ben Martin, the character, says, I'm a parent. I haven't got the luxury of principles. And this whole thing, the challenges, the real chaos, that quote that feels like that framed everything about what I was experiencing. Except this. An influential minister delivered a message about a year ago that has stuck with me ever since. And he said, it's not the big acts or the public acts or the triumphs or the heroic moments that we as men do that matter. That's not always having an impact. That's not always the ultimate of what we should achieve or aspire to. He said it's the daily small things that are done in faithfulness, just being there faithfully, consistently, with integrity. That's the highest form of principle and value for a man. And so all these things at the end of this crisis just came crashing together and helped me figure out what all this was. Was I learning from this, or was I just going to constantly now be floating in a stream of chaos? And so there's this core lesson that, through Sunrise Culture, we've talked about real true men and masculinity and value and meaning and time. And it seems that when we see men of virtue, it's those who we're supposed to emulate. It seems always to be an image of the individual man. It's always a picture of a man and himself, his principles, and his storm. His principles and his storm. But here's what I realized through all this journey, this entire story. Here's why it matters, and here's why we took a journey to get here, so that it means something, and it's not just another, motivation creator just putting something out there to get more, just one more piece of content. Obviously, it's a content factory. That's why I want you to take the journey with me that you did. So here's what I've learned, that by locking in and forsaking everything else to be a servant to a father, a husband for my family, it wasn't a betrayal of my principles. It was the purest, unfiltered, most difficult way to put all of my principles into action under real pressure in real life. So as a parent, I do have the luxury of principles. I may not have the luxury of choosing when and how to apply those and when those matter. It may be just grinding it out and being faithful to my family, to my sons. That may be what all of this Sunrise Culture really is. It's not the motivational stuff or the deep thinking philosophical stuff and all the great things that we've talked about, the real quality value things we talked about, not downplaying that. But the road that remained the same, the Sunrise Culture, my life, all of this, the road's still there, life. But me, the traveler, I don't remain. I'm different. How I understand how to apply my principles, everything the Sunrise Culture stands for, it's really different. In that crisis, I realized that I'd burned the way back. There's no going back. And that's a good thing. So I've decided this. When I've laid my head down for the last time, if I've done nothing except be a husband, a provider, to have been a father, to have raised young men, I will have done everything there is in this world to have been done. I may not have amazing victories. But could I amaze you with the defeats that I've come out of alive? Yeah.